Awesome. We're live.
Excellent.
So,
Ah,
this is our first podcast episode.
Episode 1, Star Wars.
Episode 1. What happens in episode 1 of Star Wars? That's a quiz for you.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you really think Episode 1 is. I mean, Episode 1 would be what? The Phantom Menace, right? So that's kind of the discovery of the Chosen One, to the extent, right? The discovery of the one that brings balance to the Force, and kind of the turmoil within the Jedi Order of actually being able to identify him as the Chosen One. And there was a lot of issues because he was already a little too old. And what, Qui-Gon already had an apprentice with Obi-Wan, so taking on a second would be quite a big task. And they touched on what? They touched a little bit on the meridians, kind of the underlying essence of the Force. But I think that's primarily what that movie was about, right? Was the discovery of the one that was prophesized to bring balance to the Force.
Young Anakin,
Young Anakin.
who turned out to be a real pain in the ass.
He did. Man, that whole story is kind of all over the place, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, when you think about it, people have been waiting for decades to see Luke Skywalker back on screen. You know, I mean, fine, if Anakin didn't turn out to be the one we all wanted him to be, then at least we had Luke. And so we waited what? We waited decades to get Luke Skywalker back on the big screen. And what happened? What did he do? He threw his lightsaber over his shoulder. Completely belittled the whole order, you know? It was kind of a hard situation to watch and to deal with.
Yeah, he was very jaded, very bitter.
He was in his I guess reclusivity, similar to Yoda, right? He followed the same path as Yoda. He just kind of ended up on an island somewhere on a planet, doing their thing.
Settling for mediocrity.
The mediocrity of it all. Same with Obi-Wan, right? You have all of these incredible Jedi masters that just ended up in complete isolation, you know, and maybe there's something to that. Maybe that's the real path.
Are you talking about the hermit phase, Stephen?
I'm talking about the hermit phase.
On the tarot
The
deck?
prolonged, right?
The archetypal
There's a lot of
pattern on the journey?
That's exactly it. And I think that a lot of people experience that hermit moment during COVID, right? When the COVID-19, where everyone was locked down for a substantial period of time, and you couldn't even do anything. You couldn't even go outside without permission. And so all you could really do is go within and be a hermit.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people woke up from that.
Yeah, I smoked a lot of weed through that phase, through that hermit phase. Smoked a lot of ganja.
Especially out here, like half of the states are legal, so it was kind of an open season for a lot of people out here. A lot of introspection aided by the plant. And I think even for myself, that's kind of when I really started to get into retention was 2020, 2021. There was that period of being a hermit, of like deep isolation, also mixed with this desire to like want to go out and mingle with the opposite sex, maybe not in the most productive of ways. And so, I did that and felt completely depressed, completely drained after doing that because of that deep contrast of like being alone and reading a book, and then just going out there and being a complete degenerate, lustful degenerate. And it was after that I started to look at like some real retention content. and there was Dante Young and a couple of other guys that really kind of opened me up to this. And I think that it wouldn't have happened if there wasn't that level of being a hermit, you know, being in that phase. I don't know if you had something similar to that.
Yeah, that's when I stumbled across, well, that's when I started really getting into sexual alchemy. So
Okay.
I I spent many months living in a caravan, holed up in a caravan, just smoking blunts, and yeah, doing a lot of introspection, becoming quite a hermit, and then I met this older woman. She was about 20 years older than me, and very attractive woman.
Cougar.
Yeah, she was a cougar. She she was very very smoking hot, and I had so much pent up sexual energy because I was practicing retention, but I was still fapping, I was still edging, but I wasn't releasing.
Right.
And combined with the
Right.
weed, it just created this sexual root chakra maelstrom where I just had this vortex of sexual energy just pulsing inside of me, just wanting to express itself. And I
Yeah.
met this woman, and we started hanging out, and I just took what I'd practiced, fapping without releasing, and applied it to our relationship. And that was my first real deep dive into sexual alchemy. So we would just have very, very long, intense sessions, and it was incredible. It was actually incredible. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, unlike anything she'd ever experienced. And unfortunately, at that time, I didn't understand that if you read the works of Samael Aun Weor, if that's how you pronounce it, I notice you say Weor.
Yeah, I think that is. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I think that.
Yeah, you seem to have some like Slavic, would you say like Slavic or Eastern European ancestry of some kind? Would that be accurate?
Man, I don't know, Ben. I'm kind of a mutt. I have no idea. My dad's from Switzerland, migrated here in the 60s.
Yeah, Swiss. I can see the Swiss. Yeah.
The Swiss, yeah, and then my mom was adopted, and so I never found out really where she came from, and so it's a mystery. I never did any of the DNA tests or anything like that, and so, but see, like I like, not to get too off topic, because I think the story of the older woman is incredible, but I feel almost like Blade, where it's like I'm like half ginger. Right, like I'm a ginger, but I can go outside and not get burnt. So I'm kind of like a day walker in that respect. And so I don't know if that's the Swiss side of me, or if that's the side of me that is unknown to my mom. I don't know.
So you've just got an unknown,
Yeah,
completely unknown
and
side.
a big question mark. And I, like, I was bouncing around with the idea of whether or not I should do that. Like, what was it, the 23andMe, whatever those DNA tests are. And I feel like maybe it's best to just leave it be, not really delve into that.
Yeah, where they map your genome and take your genetic information and sell it to extraterrestrials.
Whoops, we didn't mean to do that. Exactly,
Hey, but it's only $50, so it's all good.
Right, it's only $50 in the convenience. I mean, you get a whole map, a big thing down to the percentage, and the allure is there. And see, that's how they get you. Don't you want to know whether or not you're related to like Abraham Lincoln or like Genghis Khan or something? I mean, it's pretty enticing.
I heard that something like over 50% of European men, which would include, you and me.
Yeah.
Over 50% of European men are genetically traced back to Genghis Khan. Like we have Genghis Khan's DNA in our veins.
You know, like, isn't that kind of the contrast? Like, isn't that insane? Because when you think of a deep-rooted masculine, you know, of course, Genghis Khan comes up. I mean, what's more masculine than spreading your seed to the point to where like 50% of the population is related to you? And so that goes against the idea of retention, though, right? Because he clearly wasn't retaining if the end result is where we are now. And so it's just interesting how somebody is able to maintain that level of conquest or purpose while still being a complete, you know, lustful, whatever he was doing. Like, it just doesn't really add up, right?
I wonder how many loads that guy shot, you know, over the course of his career. How many nuts did he blast? And still
wake up.
And wake up, just ready to conquer, ready to slay.
Ready to go. Like what was it? Like, what kind of milk was that man drinking? What was he doing? Is he just eating like raw parts or something? Like, what?
Well,
what was going on?
They drank blood. They drank horse blood. That's what they did.
Oh.
Yeah. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. They were drinking blood.
When I was studying carnivore, when I went through my carnivore stage, I did a deep dive on it, and it turns out that the ancient Mongolians, they would ride for days. Like, they would ride for 3 days on end. This is how they were able to conquer so much territory. They were so savage. They would ride for 3 days on end. And then they would stop. And then they would just kill some horses. And then they would eat something like 9 pounds of horse meat.
What?
They would just sit down and eat, like, each man would eat like 9 pounds of horse meat. Raw. Like raw horse meat.
Did they not eat for days before that? They just like were completely drained and then just were able to fill back up?
Yeah,
That's wild.
That's how they operated, yeah. And and they would just drink horse blood. Right. So those motherfuckers were turbocharged. And because they ate like that, they were sustained. They could just go and go and go without stopping, without having, you know, breaks. They would just go. They would also drink horse milk. So it was horse milk, horse blood, and horse flesh.
Wow.
That's what made those Mongolians so savage.
Complete beasts. I mean, just, you know, like, and you think about it out here in the States, you can't drink raw milk. It's illegal for you to drink raw milk. And so, like, I'm like, and you just see that spectrum, right? Okay, like, maybe we're not in a position to be drinking horse blood or like 9 pounds of raw like horse flesh, right? But like, you know, you don't have to be drinking soy lattes and eating like these soy burgers, right? Like, on the complete other end of the spectrum, where it's just like over time there's a filter of everything masculine, or everything that is making you, that it allows you to embody masculinity, is like being slowly taken away. And I think that's, you know, we've touched on that before too, where, you know, ultimately, like, what happens ultimately if you remove meat consumption from, or at least the option, not saying you have to or don't have to, but at least the option to consume meat, and the level of testosterone that brings. You know, everything is just about diminishing testosterone.
There's a war against testicles.
There is. That's exactly it. A war against testicles.
I was shopping at the supermarket the other day, and I got some pasta, and I picked up this pasta, and then I went and got a jar of pasta sauce. And you know how on these jars they usually have the recipes for whatever meal you're gonna make. You know, like the typical meal that goes with that jar, that flavor. And so I turn this jar around. I'm like expecting to see some delicious bolognese recipe, you know, with beef mince. And and what do I find on the other side of the jar? It's like how to make bolognese. Step 1, boil the pasta. Step 2, pour this jar all over the pasta, stir, and enjoy.
That's great. It's like cereal.
I was like, what the fuck? Where's the meat, bro? Bolognese has meat in it. Like, what are you trying to do? Just cheating me of my meat. You just like, bolognese is not just sauce on pasta. That's ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. It's like they want the population to forget that it exists, or they want to price you out of it. They want to make it so expensive. You know, and I don't know in Australia, but like you can't go to McDonald's. See, this is what's crazy. You can't go to McDonald's one person for less than $15. I would assume. It's been a long time since I've been, but I'm assuming the general meal at McDonald's is like $15. But at the same time, and see, you don't know what's in that food. You have no idea. You know, you see all these videos of people putting like the hamburgers underground for 5 years or 10 years, and then they unearth it, and it's pristine. Like, it looks exactly like it did 10 years ago. Or, you know, you can take that $15 and go to your local grocery store or your local butcher and get like a pound of organic meat, you know, and then go home and cook that. Take the 15-20 minutes to go home and cook it, you know, and you know exactly what's going on, the whole process. Okay, fine. You didn't actually go and kill the animal yourself, right? And take the pound of flesh from the animal. But at least from, you know, you're cutting out a whole bunch of middlemen from having to, you know, go to the store as opposed to going to McDonald's. And see, like, the other thing that comes up with that is you see a lot of these videos on YouTube of like people from the 60s or people from the 70s just walking down the street, right? Or like videos of people in the mall from the 90s. And everyone is trim, man. Like, everyone is like decked, you know, they're looking good, man. They're wearing suits, or they're at least, you know, taking care of themselves. And everyone looks like they have energy. They're running around, they're moving around. And it's a complete contrast to what we see today. Like, today, everyone is walking around like buried in their phones or acting like, you know, complete zombies. And I think the majority of that is because, and of course, men are drained, men are effeminate, women are having to take on more of a masculine role because, you know, that's just kind of how society is right now. There's almost like a societal inversion. And then the diet, you know, the food is just so crap and so like just energy draining, so void of actual nutrition that like it's just a pit, man. And it's crazy how quickly this is. Like I'll end this thought on this note. In the 50s and the 60s, it was cool to smoke cigarettes, right? Like, the doctor's number one brand is Marlboro. Smoke your Marlboros. It'll help the pregnancy. And then, like, then you realize over time, like, oh, like, this is actually, maybe it's not a good idea to be smoking cigarettes as a pregnant parent, right? Like, we're going through that on a crazy rate. We have no idea what these cell phones are doing to us. We have no idea what the ingredients and the microplastics and all this food's doing to us, or the shots that we're just putting in our arms. Like, we have no idea. There's no time. There's no time to offer like a good amount of objective perspective to look back and say, oh shit, like maybe we shouldn't have done that, you know? Crazy.
Yeah, it's just like all we're given is here's the science, folks. Do it.
Yeah. Trust the experts. Trust the experts. You know, like, unbelievable.
Safe and effective. Safe and effective.
Dude, that's it.
Meanwhile, we got people just falling over left, right, and center. Just like, oh, another unexplained death. Oh, another 25-year-old with a heart condition, which we didn't know about before.
Crazy. Be sure to give it to the kids, right? Be sure to line your kids up for this. And like, that's like nobody has been really held accountable for any of this stuff. That's what's crazy about it. And I think a lot of it is because the attention spans are so shortened, right? That like what's the next thing, right? It's always the next thing. Who are we supposed to be fighting now? Who are we supposed to be loving now? And it's like we're just being told what to do, what to think, what to believe, and nobody has really the mindset to look at this stuff and say, like, all right, there's something else going on here. It's not like maybe these vaccines are not safe and effective. Maybe these experts really aren't experts, and they're just paid. They're just paid to say this stuff. Maybe the food that we're eating is really bad. Maybe there's a reason why pornography or I'm sorry, corn is free. Yet you have to go to a store to buy a bottle of water. But as long as you have an internet connection, you could deplete your energy.
It's absurd. Absolutely absurd. And this is why, more than ever, we need to bring back testosterone. We need to bring back testicles, bro. I believe that is our mission here. When we talk about purpose, it's becoming increasingly clear that if there's any purpose to be had in this day and age, it's to make testicles cool again.
Yeah.
I might actually update my YouTube banner to that slogan. It's currently make men strong again, but I think it needs to be make testicles cool again.
I can see that. I can see it now. I mean, look, the thing is this. When we're saying make testicles great again, when we're saying things like make men great again, it's taking the word toxic and removing it from the word masculinity. We've all been psyoped into thinking that anything that's masculine is toxic simply because we've put these words together. But like there's nothing to say that there's toxic femininity, right? Because that's not a word. They haven't pushed those terms together. And like that's gotta end. Like this idea that masculinity is inherently bad, that having testicles is inherently bad. Exhibiting high levels of testosterone is bad. Like it doesn't mean that you're subjugating, that you're oppressive. It doesn't mean that you're, whatever.
Ghengis Khan.
It's just Genghis Khan. Like we got to make it cool again. Like there's no way around this anymore. We can't keep going down this direction of feminization, of estrogen in the food and in the water supply, and a ban on raw milk because hey, it might be incredibly nutritious and help support testosterone production. Like it's these little things. Like we don't even know what they're spraying in the skies, dude. Like what does that do to the endocrine system? What does that do to the hormones? These 5G radiation towers, these things here, right? These headphones, like we have no idea what this does to us. And these are things that we need to combat, right? It's not like we're looking at an enemy with a suit saying, hey, I'm the enemy, right? Like these things that we're quote unquote fighting aren't necessarily tangible. We're fighting disruptors. We're fighting an invasive amount of estrogen on the supply of testosterone. It's like, okay, well, how do you actually combat that? Well, I mean, it's things like this. Well, it's embodying masculinity to the extent that you know how, and then it's spreading the word, ultimately.
Yeah. Going back to our conversation on Genghis Khan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that motherfucker had his diet dialed in. Pounds of raw horse meat mingled with intermittent fasting over days, just on an ongoing cycle. But what I think is important to highlight is how did he bust so many nuts and still retain so much vigor?
That's what we're talking about.
So one factor would have been for sure the diet. But another factor, going back to the sexual alchemy, and this is where we come back to the works of Samael Aun-Weor. He described these two pathways that we can take. He described the pathway of the black magician which is also known as the left-hand path, and the white magician, or the right-hand path. He makes this very, very clear in his book, Perfect Matrimony, breaks it down. And he says, the black magician is someone who always releases. They release their vital energy, they practice shooting their seed. And what happens when they start getting on this track of releasing is they continue, the energies are pulled down towards the inferno, as he says, towards the root chakra. The serpent, the sexual energy, represented in the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis, the serpent descends down to hell. And so that person who practices releasing on a regular basis, they become more and more demonic, essentially. They become more and more rooted in the physical. And so that kind of person, if they fully commit to that path, they can gain vast power through that act of releasing. But it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of consuming more and more, taking more and more. And this is where we start getting into like blood sacrifice and rituals, and all the symbolism you see in movies where someone sells their soul to the devil, but they have to do like a blood sacrifice. They have to give a pound of flesh. They have to do something. They have to give something to the devil to gain access to the power or the fame or the money. This is true. This is real. That's what a black magician does.
Eyes wide shut type stuff, right?
Yeah.
Stanley Cooper.
I haven't seen it, but yeah, most likely, definitely. So someone like Genghis Khan, who's gone around killing a lot of people, he is continually offering that blood sacrifice to the to the inner devil, the dark force. So he's able to keep accessing more and more power through continuing to sacrifice more and more and more. That's why he didn't get depleted through releasing, and that's why many dark agents, black magicians, can do that without being depleted. Now,
you think there's like a reverence towards Genghis Khan that was actually practicing black magic because he was able to release, but still retain that vigor, like you're saying.
100%. Yeah. So that's an option that's available to all of us. If we want to go down that path of gaining greater power, you can become a black magician. But you got to ask yourself, what's the cost? What do I have to sacrifice? What do I have to give up in order to gain the world? Christ talks about it. What does it profit a man who gains the whole world but loses his soul? Because ultimately you lose your soul if you get on that path of black magic.
Yeah, so I mean, why would like that? That's not enticing at all. I mean, what is the gain other than materialism? I mean,
exactly.
You're forfeiting your eternal life for the temporal life that you can only see. And it's like if you're saturated with the senses to the point to where that sounds tantalizing, where giving up your soul for more of that pleasure, that sensory pleasure, it reminds me of Cypher from The Matrix, right?
Yeah.
He wanted the meat. He's like, I know this isn't real, but this meat is so good. That it ultimately ends in destruction. There's no conceivable way that a path like that is maintainable. There's no way. It just doesn't. I mean, people may have tried it, but I think that an adherence to a path like this, it requires that level of fortitude, of determination, of strict obedience, and I think that's only the light can offer that. I don't think that engaging in anything a degenerate or a debauchery like type of nature is a way to adhere. Like you're gonna fumble the bag. You're gonna fumble the bag. And what's the virtue behind that? I mean, I think that the path of retention requires a level of morality and integrity and virtue, and that's something that the left path doesn't it doesn't provide. Like it just doesn't. I don't know. That's a slippery slope, you know. That's a slippery slope. That's a very egoic slope.
Yeah, I mean, both paths promise power. That's clear. If you choose one side and you follow it to its extreme, you will gain power. But the question is, what sort of power? You know, do you want the dark side power? Do you want the light side power? And so that brings us to the light side, the white magician. In the perfect matrimony, he says, the white magician never spills his seed, never spills the cup of Hermes. The grey magician, who's in between, sometimes spills the cup. All right, and this is talking to all you guys who are followers of Taoism, and you follow guys like Mantak Chia and all these Taoist teachers. You know, maybe you follow some tantric teachers. You've been on some tantric retreats, and they'll tell you it's okay to release. They'll tell you it's okay to release like once a month. You know, but what he says in the perfect matrimony cuts through that, and this is what I love about Samael. He's pretty dogmatic. Like, he's pretty cut and dry, black and white. But I actually find it really refreshing because he just cuts through the BS. And he says the grey magician releases occasionally. And the grey magician always inevitably winds up becoming a black magician with time.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So let's bring it back to sexual alchemy, right? I was seeing this cougar, and we're having, you know, a lot of sex, and what I didn't realize back then was that the orgasm is the culprit. You know, when we're practicing semen retention, we talk about how semen, it's all about the semen, like retaining the semen. I would say that's part of the equation, but fundamentally, it's actually about the orgasm. And this is what not many people want to know either. Okay, like a lot of guys who get on retention, they're like, oh, how do I have a non-ejaculatory orgasm? It's like, nah, bro, you're not getting it. You're not actually understanding what this is about. The orgasm is a short circuit. So when you get that intense rush of pleasure, when you get that overwhelming relief, that euphoria that comes from the orgasm, this is if you're male or female, you are essentially withdrawing, you're drawing down all of the power, you're drawing down all of the savings out of your bank account and just spending it on pleasure, you know, in that instant pleasure. You're just converting all that power into pleasure in a few brief moments. You're drawing down all that bioelectricity and just converting it into pleasure. So it feels incredible, obviously, but what are you doing to your nervous system? In the perfect matrimony, he says the orgasm shatters the nervous system, male or female. And so I was giving this woman like multiple orgasms. Sometimes I shit you not, up to 20 orgasms per session. And I didn't realize that I was just destroying her nervous system. I was literally like messing her up. And I saw that over time. I thought, oh, because I'm giving her so much euphoria and pleasure, our relationship will get better. But it actually got worse and worse. She started acting out more, like she started getting way more emotional. way more up and down. And it took me a while to realize I did that. I thought I was, you know, I thought I was doing this amazing thing, but I was actually just destroying her nervous system. So, like, this is some pretty deep shit that not many people are ready to hear, but I find it really, really interesting because when it comes down to it, bro, this is the fundamental thing that we're dealing with in the world. It's like it's sex. It's the fundamental thing. If we can't get this right, then nothing else that we do on top of that really matters, is really of any significance. So we got to get this right.
I agree. I agree. You know, and it's both men and women, right? It's an understanding of the incredible power that you have with this knowledge. Most men throughout history would never have been introduced to this level of knowledge of the idea of retaining. I mean, maybe intuitively, some men have, but this general adoption and it like you were saying earlier of the gray magician inevitably falling into into black magic, because there's always that temptation, right? There's always you're getting that once a month release, and so you feel onto that, like you grasp onto that feeling. It's like that the incident is so near in your memory that you can reflect on it because it's only been a month, it's only been a few days, and so you can recall that fairly easily, and the feeling of that pleasure is still so fresh, and so the possibility of falling again is greatly increased. So that's why I always think of Will Ferrell in the movie Old School. Like his character is initially not drinking alcohol, but then like through partying, he starts to drink, and he says, "Once it hits your lips, it's so good." And that's it. It's like once you've broken the seal of release, and that feeling is so fresh, you're more apt to fall into that. And like we've talked about this too before, where it's like, okay, when you drive by a McDonald's and you smell that cooking beef, you smell it, it's enticing, it's tantalizing, it draws you in. See, this is different, right? Like we're literally explaining to men to go against their nature. Okay, the very thing that is driving your carnal nature. We're saying, hey, look, you need to look at this objectively and say it's not a good thing to be in your dark room in a corner touching yourself to pixels on a screen. Like if you're engaging in this type of behavior, in this debauchery, and then you go out the next day and try to be confident and talk to a woman, she's going to sense that off of you. You have to walk the walk. You have to embody these masculine traits. One of them is being chaste, right? Like not to just go around, screwing a whole bunch of women. Like it's just not. The other thing is this. When we're looking at what is considered a good guy versus a bad guy, right? And you look at like Genghis Khan, there was a level of attraction to that, right? Because was he willingly going around and having these all of these women? Like was there a level of what do they call it? What do they call that? Consent? Like, was it consensual? Like, did women notice that this was a strong man that they wanted to reproduce with, or was he forcing them? Right? Because like typically, most women wouldn't be attracted to that unless they are. But from what I understand, no. Like most women
I would
aren't
disagree, bro.
attracted.
I would disagree.
Yeah.
I would say that, yeah, most women are attracted to that. They are attracted to that Scarface, that bad motherfucker.
How do you then embody that while not being that type of a guy that pursues and goes and sleeps with 100 women? And isn't that black magician, right? How can you embody the white magician or the chaste individual while still have that bad guy aura, you know?
I think this is the eternal question for men. I think this question
Yeah.
is as far as is as old as Adam and Eve. So I was watching Elisha Long. I love that guy's channel. It's very refreshing. I find it so refreshing how he takes all these things that we know as like men doing personal development and just kind of takes a shit on it, but in a very
Yeah.
convincing way. He was talking about how he he's talking about how like who would he prefer to hang out with? The guy practicing nofap and like obsessing about his streak and like getting all caught up and hung up about his like being addicted to prawn. He's like, dude, you're not addicted to prawn. You're just a horny bastard. You're just a horny bastard who can only get access to puss if it's on pixels. Like, you're not addicted to prawn. You're just a man. And he's saying, like, if it's a choice between that guy, like hanging out with that guy, versus hanging out with a guy who likes to smoke cigars and drink rum, and just fully owns his masculinity and all those rough edges. He's like, I'll hang out with that guy every time over the guy who's like practicing nofap. And so, what it highlights to me is that we got a lot of incel sort of guys who they're just fed up with women, or they're just not strong in themselves, and so they do use semen retention as cope. I heard that a while back and I thought, yeah, that's actually true. Like, a lot of guys get attracted to semen retention because, let's face it, they just can't get bitches. And semen retention does bring you that power. It does bring you that raw masculinity. However, we got a lot of guys who kind of get too caught up, they get too hung up on the semen retention and just holding, and they don't realize that the purpose of semen retention is to build you back up into a strong man so you can go out and take a woman, so you can go out and take your wife, you can go out and get that queen.
Right.
And so when you get your queen, you're not just going to sit there and look at her, you're going to ravage her. You're going to make sweet love to her. You're going to express your sexual nature with her. And so what that looks like as a retainer, as a white magician, is you're going to start practicing sexual alchemy. Samael describes this as an ancient temple art. In the ancient temples, in the highest echelons of society, sexual alchemy was a secret. And if you shared the secret of sexual alchemy, like in ancient Egypt, in ancient Mesopotamia, in ancient Peru, in the Incan civilization, this was a highly, highly guarded secret for the upper echelons of society, for the nobility. Only they were allowed to know the secrets of sexual alchemy, which was having sex without releasing, without eating the forbidden fruit, the orgasm. And they knew back then that if they cultivated that, if they practiced that on a regular basis, they would raise the kundalini, they would raise the shakti faster than any other method. Faster than, doing meditation, practicing yoga, eating a certain diet, faster than like prayer, studying scripture, any of these methods. All of that was just preparation to get you to the pinnacle of spiritual awakening, which was sexual alchemy. So this is what we need to realize as dudes, is that we have a sexual nature for a reason, and the whole purpose is to take us to that pinnacle where we face the greatest temptation, which is to take the fruit and eat it, which is the orgasm, but actually not eat it. To let go in that moment. That is what Samael describes. That's what makes us a god.
See, that's the difficulty of it, right? Because okay, let's say you're looking at it from, let's say you're recovering from an addiction to lust. Let's say you're just a degenerate, lustful guy, right? You can't stop touching yourself, and so you're going through a period of not touching yourself. Let's look at the alcoholic, right? Somebody who drank every day. Now somebody puts the bottle down. Now we're essentially saying, hey, take this drink and put it up to your nose and smell it and hold it. You can't drink it, but just smell it, you know? And that level of being on the razor's edge of being tempted or exposed to the very thing, right? Because according to Veor, if you spill the seed, right, and we all know this, when we do, right, we can instantly feel that pull down. We can instantly feel that le petit mort, that little death, where the energy is just gone. And this is something I want to ask you about because, okay, let's say, you know, a lot of young men, and I think that you touched on this earlier with your story, will edge without spilling. And see, I'm of the mindset that this is wrong, right? That even by doing this, you're expelling a certain level of your energy. You're giving up your aura by doing this, even though you're not spilling the seed. It's just that act of it. That act itself is releasing, right? Because you're experiencing a level of pleasure that you wouldn't have otherwise be experiencing if you wouldn't be touching yourself. And so when we're talking about, you know, the initial abstinence from the corn or from lust, I think there should be a period, if you have the ability, if you're a single man, there needs to be a period of complete detachment. With a woman, I can't speak on that because, you know, giving up lust while in a relationship isn't something I'm familiar with. But as a single man, there should be a period where you don't engage in that. You know, to build up that fortitude, to build up the ability to retain and to get the days under your belt so you know what it feels like to have a full ball sack. And then it's the exposure into women. Now, personally, I was retaining for 9 months before I got into a relationship, and it wasn't very long within that relationship that I ended up spilling. And that was a great cost, right? Because there was 9 months. And then once I experienced that initial spill, they all kept coming because that one was so, like, the experience of that was so fresh. So how can we cultivate a level of retention over time and then engage in intimacy with a woman without spilling the seed, to understand when that feeling comes up and to pull back? I know that Veor discusses that as well, not to get, you know, right to the edge of release, but maybe get to like a 6 or a 7 out of 10, you know, and then once you're up there, then you got to pull back and do some breathing and or various things like that.
This is why he really hones in on love, the love aspect, right?
Yeah.
Because without the love, it is lust. It is just pure lust. But love is like a transmutation of lust. So you'll still feel this incredible level of attraction. But it's an attraction where you're not trying to take something. It's actually flipped, where it's an attraction where you just want to merge with. You want to merge with. You don't want to take away. You don't want to take her for yourself. It's like you want to become one with her. That's the shift in the energy. And when you come with that approach, it's a completely different experience. You're not looking to get an outcome. You're looking to experience her. And the process of making love with that energy, you know, having transmuted, having raised the lust up to a higher level of expression, you're entering into it. You're entering into it as an experience, as a shared experience. It's like you're looking to experience the deepest part of her. That's what you're doing. You're looking to connect and merge with the deepest part of her rather than just to get pleasure. See that difference? And you can only reach the deepest part of her soul, by taking time, by being tender, by treating the experience with reverence, by treating the experience like an act of worship. He talks about the Ark of the Covenant, right? The ancient Hebrew Ark of the Covenant that the Israelites carried around the desert and then eventually put in the Temple of Solomon. So the Ark of the Covenant was what they put in the Holy of Holies, the holiest, most sacred part of the temple. And the Ark of the Covenant contained the Ten Commandments, the 2 stone tablets of Moses that he took down from the mountain where he saw God face to face, and God actually wrote the commandments on the tablets of stone. He brought those tablets down, and they built this beautiful ark, this wooden box, the sacred box to house the tablets and also many different artifacts that they'd gathered throughout their time in the desert. So this was pretty much the heart of their entire culture, their entire religion, everything. And so on the top of this ark, there was these 2 angels called cherubim, one of the most powerful angels in the heavenly hierarchy, the cherubim. And the cherubim, these 2 angels, were male and female. Literally male and female. And the way they were sitting on top of this ark was with their wings outstretched, facing each other and touching. They were touching wings, which is a symbol of the sexual act between male and female. And so what we're seeing here in this ancient culture, which, you know, could be argued had the most direct experience of God, they became the ambassadors of the teachings of the law. What they were showing us is that the holiest of holies, the most sacred of the sacred, is the union of masculine and feminine in the sexual act.
That's a very difficult concept to merge with, right? Especially with a lot of institutional religions, is to think that, okay, maybe the underlying foundation of all existence in and of itself is the sexual act. I mean, everything from cellular mitosis and meiosis to the cherubims on the Ark of the Covenant, you know, and it's only through as Beor talks about the infrasexuals, right, where people on one end of the spectrum, on the complete I guess negative celibate, if you're looking at celibacy in a negative connotation in terms of suppressing the sexual desire, as you know, rather than transmuting it, if you're suppressing it and saying you can't do this stuff, no, sex is bad, there is no sex is meaningless, don't even worry about it, the people who tout that are more likely to express their sexuality in grotesque and awful ways that we've seen. And so, right, you can look at these rhythms and these rhymings throughout all of religion. You look at, you know, on top of the Ark of the Covenant, you know, you're looking at the 2 cherubims with their wings touched in union. You see that the potent life force that comes when a man and a woman are in that level of union, not to get another notch under your belt or to get some sort of a validation. You know, you want to feel more, you want to get that nice egoic itch going. No, it's you're in union, and so there now that union, the 2 become one, not visually, right? Not necessarily in this quote unquote 3D, but in an etheric sense, in an extra sensory way of perception. The 2 have become one.
Yeah. You know, I would say that that level of merging with the feminine is extremely terrifying for the, let's say, for the immature masculine soul.
Right.
And I would say that to one who is carrying still a lot of wounding, is carrying a lot of fear, that the alternative to go and become this man who has to conquer many, many women, right? Who has to go around and conquer many different women. I would say that is fundamentally coming from an infrasexual place. And I want to frame this right, because what we're talking about is the highest, the pinnacle experience of existence itself. Not just of being human, but of existence, of God. Because God is fundamentally masculine and feminine. It's both contained within God. So when we get to that level where we are in that deep union, in that deep sexual alchemy with our priestess, we are touching God in that moment. And I would say for the ego, that's extremely confronting and terrifying, because to touch God like that also carries within it the possibility of falling from that experience, of losing that experience. Once you're so deeply intimate, it's like the mother wound. This is another very taboo topic amongst men, because deep down, I think most, if not all, men are carrying this fundamental wound. We come into this world out of a vagina, and from day one, we are literally nourished, nurtured, protected, in union with the mother, with the feminine. And then slowly over time, it becomes clearer and clearer that we want to have our own existence. We want to have our own independent identity. That's just the natural progression. So we pull away from the very thing that is most fundamental to our existence, the feminine. We pull away from it. And that brings us our freedom in a certain sense, but it also brings this deep trauma of losing the most fundamental, the most beautiful, the most nourishing, the most basic level of security that we have, the mother.
Right.
And so as we grow in independence, as we step into manhood, masculinity, we are always carrying this deep seed of this echo, this memory of what it was like to be in absolute union with the feminine. But there's always that fear, that insecurity of, I don't want to be consumed. I don't want my ego to dissolve. I don't want to go back to like being one, because that means there's no me anymore, right? This is why sexual alchemy is the true ego dissolution, because it's merging back with the feminine. However, where the semen retention comes in is that we never actually fully dissolve into the feminine. as close as we get to her, if we retain, we still maintain our masculine polarity. So it's like this never-ending journey of getting closer and closer and closer, but never fully collapsing, if that makes sense. And that is what brings us to the face of God.
That when we're looking at healing that mother, right? I think, like, okay, we look at it in one of two ways. This is the paradox in and of itself, because men are not able to fully dissolve themselves into the potential for a union with that feminine, right? They're not willing to let go into that. But at the same time, most men haven't experienced a period of real isolation away from the feminine. I feel like I know a lot of men go from being with their mothers and being nurtured by their mothers to then going and being nurtured by their wives. And so there's always been this level of dependence on the feminine. And so if there's an over level of dependence on the feminine without a period of isolation where you can fully embody that masculine within you and have the reliance on that, right? Like you don't need a woman to massage your neck. Like you could do it yourself. You know, if you feel like you got a neck cramp, you can take care of that yourself. Not saying that being with a woman isn't great, but there needs to be that level of isolation. And I think that that's important so that when you are reintroduced with your woman, when you are reintroduced with being around the feminine, you can do that more wholly as a man. You can do that. You can really step into that because there isn't a necessity on a level of neediness. It's full presence on your end, full presence on her end, which allows for complete vulnerability and kind of a melding into that union. But if there's like a superficial need, you know, that oh, I need you to fill something that I don't have, like there's an emptiness within me that you're filling, I don't think it works that way. I don't know. I just don't think it does. I personally haven't practiced sexual alchemy with a woman. I attempted to do so, and it didn't work. I spilt it fairly early on, so this next time I'm hoping to really get into it. But I would assume that it takes that level of, you know, of full embodiment on both the part of the masculine and the feminine without needing it.
Yeah. You know, I would say that there's levels to it. There's, in ancient cultures and in, you know, still in some cases in tribal parts of the world, there's that initiation where a boy is taken away from his mother by the men of the village, taken into the wilderness and left alone, like you're saying, that period of isolation. And that becomes his initiation, being left alone by himself and having to survive for a certain amount of time. That etches into his psyche this embodied knowing that he can survive without his mother. And then when he comes back to the village from that moment on, he doesn't go back to his mother. He's with the men. Right. And that's what we're missing in our Western culture, modern culture. However, yeah, it gets to the point where when you fully step into that embodiment of your masculinity, it reaches a point where you realize that you can't take the next step as a man. You can't take the next step in your masculinity without merging with the feminine, without coming back to the feminine.
Right.
So it's that acknowledgement, because if you deny that, if you keep trying to like man up and continue your journey, just getting pissed on by the Divine Mother right now, brother. It's beautiful.
Great, I love it. Feels great.
If you keep trying to be that man and keep denying the feminine, you end up on the path of the infrasexual. You end up on the path of these guys who are like, I'm celibate for life. I read The Coiled Serpent and it talks about the virtues of lifelong celibacy, man. And it talks about how women are just like the physical body's disgusting. You know, women contain mucus and pus and like bacteria, and the female body's disgusting, man. And it's like, bro, you missed the whole point. You have to acknowledge the fact that as a complete man, you need to connect with the feminine. There is a level of need. There is an acknowledgement of the neediness, but it's from a higher level this time.
Hey, bro, I don't mind being out here in the rain, but this phone's probably going to get taken out here.
Yeah, bro, you do what you got to do. I think that brings it to a nice close.
Brings us to a nice close on this particular episode. Thank you, Ben. And so let's actually, before we go, let's talk about that level of initiation, right? Of healing that mother wound. Like, what comes after that? Well, you meet a group of men. You go back to your group of men, and well, you know, a lot of people don't really have that, right? You don't have that in your society. There isn't really a group that you can go to. But you've developed that kind of a group that men can go to, that goes beyond the barriers of borders. You know, you're in Australia, I'm in Kentucky, and we're able to converse. People from all around the world that have discovered this truth are able to get together and merge their minds, you know, to discuss these topics. What does it mean to be a man? How can you properly transmute the sexual energy?
Yeah, brother,
That's the sons of God. That's the sons of God.
That's the sons of God. You know, I like to think of it as we all have our own sons of God because we are all God. We are all a part of God. And every man carries in his testicles the sons of God. His own sons.
Yeah.
You know, every man carries millions of sons of God in his nuts. So the sons of God, the community we created, is just like the macrocosm of the microcosm, where we're all just little sperm cells getting together, but we all come from the same God. We're all in the same God's nutsack. You know, we're all brothers, essentially. So that's why we created the sons of God, so we can all get together as sperm cells of God and discuss and be in community, sharpen each other, strengthen each other. And yeah, it's a powerful place. You know, we discuss everything from sexual alchemy to money to women to fitness, health. Like, we go deep and we get raw, we get vulnerable, and there's no topic untouched in there. And we'll call you out if you're acting like a little bitch. That's probably one of the biggest points.
Yeah. Hey, come on in, jump on in, get into the sack with us. We'll all swim around. Okay, and we have a good time.
Yeah, let's start swimming in the same stream together.
Let's do it.
All right.
And it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, brother. Thank you very much for getting us on. I appreciate it.
Welcome, bro. Talk soon.
We'll do it again. I love you.
Love
have
you,
a
bro.
great time, brother.
Later.
God bless you.
God bless.